Do we have a knife or anything sharp over there? Oh, I'll use a key. I've got a key. God, they really are bulletproof. I think you're supposed to use scissors. It's like it's made of Kevlar. Ah, scissors. Thank you, you're very kind. Hi everybody, how are you going today? It is very good to see you. And a viewer recently said to me, why do you say it's very good to see us when you don't see us? And I had a little bit of an existential meltdown at that point, because it was kind of like, but what do you mean? I love seeing you guys. My eyes are looking at your eyes right now. Anyway, from my perspective, it's very good to see you. I love seeing you. And I'd like to think it's a two-way street. Today we're here to talk about this, the CFexpress. Let's dive into it. You might wonder what that is, and if you've never heard of it before, it's XQD, sort of, kind of. XQD, but not XQD. So let's go and have a little bit of history about the difference between these two. And let me show you camera 3. There they are, although they're not together right now. We're going to take this out of its box in just a second, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about how ridiculously fast these cards are. So as you can see written there on the front of the box, this white square here, it says to us we have a ridiculous 1,700 megabytes of read speed and 1,200 megabytes of write speed. That's mental. That is the fastest card I think I've ever seen being sold for a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Now this means all sorts of things, but this is the first part of the CFexpress, meaning fast. This is the first part of the CFexpress story, is its speed. But where did it all start? Well, it started back here with XQD. Now, this is where I'm going to open this box. It's amazing how they make these boxes so hard to get into so you can't steal them when they're in the store. But what you can see here, CFexpress and XQD are exactly the same form factor. What does this mean? Why are they different standards but not different standards? Let's go back to XQD. So one of the very first cameras to have XQD was the Nikon D4. Which I purchased in 2012. A lot of people complained. I'm an early adopter, so I love the idea of new, faster, more robust, etc., technology. I was into it. XQD, fantastic. They created this form factor. It was almost pretty much only Sony making cards, and a few other manufacturers made them, but I've never seen them in the wild. But thus we had this new form factor. And there were a lot of things, a long list of things that XQD is better at than say SD or CF, compact flash, which I was using back in, I don't know, 1997 or 1998, might have been the first time I used a compact flash, where a 4 megabyte card cost 120, it's insane. Anyway, we've come a long way in just over 20 years. So this format was, and this is another thing that I'll have to dive into deeper, this format was created by Sony, yet this thing is not owned and created by Sony, but it's the same form factor, but the insides are different. Weird, right? Don't get it. But the next part of this story is this can go into the same cameras that this can go into, as long as they've had a firmware update. It's pretty exciting. Why do we have CFexpress when we already have XQD? Well, one, it's a format not owned by Sony, and two, well, it's actually a faster standard than XQD. But here we are. I'll show them side by side out of the box now. There they are, exactly the same side, form factor. They work in the same cameras as long as they've had the appropriate firmware updates. Now, why would you want one over the other? Let's say you own a Nikon D4, a D5, a D850. Why would you want a CFexpress versus an XQD when XQD is working just fine? And really, for the older cameras, the D4, the D5, the D850, there is probably no real advantage in the actual process of photographing. And the only place you might well see an advantage is in the downloading of your images, as long as your computer has a fast enough bus. Let's say USB-C or USB 3, 3.1, etc. Then you will see this card read at 1.7 gigabytes roughly per second. That's really fast and pretty insane. This reads at 440 versus 1,700. So it's 4 times faster, give or take. That's the only real advantage you're going to get on those older cameras, if and when the firmware updates come. In regards to a Z6 and a Z7, which also use XQD, I'm not sure we're going to really see any advantages with those either. We can now, with a firmware update, use these, and maybe with a firmware update, we'll see the camera's frame rates increase. But look, I think that's unlikely. But we will see. But what I do think is, in the next generation of Nikon cameras, and we can see it with the new Canon flagship body, the Canon 1DX Mark III, which now uses CFexpress, with that camera, you are actually going to use the speed because it is doing high speed video. So this is where we can differentiate between XQD and CFexpress. This one is going to be more useful for high speed, large bit rate, 4K, 5K, 6K, 8K. Can you hear me say Canon R5? You'd have to think, wouldn't you? The Canon R5 would have one of these slots in it. Otherwise, they're really going to be crippling that 8K video they're talking about. So it's going to be really useful for those sort of situations. So Z8, Z9, whatever is going to be there, and obviously it's going to be really helpful if that has higher end video capabilities as well. Could this possibly mean, as with the Canon, we may see RAW internal on the Nikons? I certainly think that's highly likely with the new Nikon flagship camera that we're expecting to hear about this year as a response to the Canon R5. But photography, that's why a lot of us are here. We're here just for photography. What does it mean to photography? Well, there is talk and speculation that by having a card like this, it means we can write much faster, 4 times faster than this card here. And that might mean that they create technology where there's less buffering of an image and it just writes quicker to the card. Now, I'm no I/O, input-output expert, so I could be missing a lot of bits in between, and I've talked to people in my comments that there are a few things that go on between the sensor and writing to the card. That's not what RAW files are, I suppose, in regards to video. A little bit more happens when it comes to stills, I think. I'm a little bit outside my pay grade. But ultimately, these cards mean we're going to be able to technically take photographs really fast. It has the capacity, and it's whether the buffers and the pipelines and the chips and whatever else within the system can do their parts quick, whether the camera manufacturers actually use the full capacity of these cards. And this is really just the beginning. This is a SanDisk variant. Last time I looked, there was something like 12 or 15 different manufacturers globally of CFexpress. This is now an open format as opposed to XQD, so we could see quite a lot of players making these. It'll ultimately drive the price down, and this is going to become an amazing format. And of course, we've seen 2 of these in the new Canon. So now that Canon are doing it, I think we'll see a much broader adoption. My recommendation as to whether you should buy XQD or CFexpress at this point in time is simply this. If you've got a camera that can take both, then of course I would be buying CFexpress. It is the future. Nikon have said to us, in the case of Nikon, that the D850 and the D5, etc., they will be upgraded to handle CFexpress, but they haven't done it yet. Now, I get it. Right now, we're in a transition period. XQD is still around. You can still buy them just. And obviously Nikon is under a lot of pressure, just like everybody else, to do a lot of things at once. So it's not at the top of their priority list. I would like to see them make good on their word and do that for people so they can start to buy these little guys in the future. So for those people who have a D850 and maybe their XQD card has just died, I'm sorry, and it's a difficult decision as to whether you buy another XQD card or whether you hold off. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not quite sure when Nikon are going to do it, but you know, I suppose if it's for work, you've got no choice. You know, it's paid gigs. You've got the two slots. You've got your SD and your XQD. You're not comfortable shooting with one card. Well, you don't have a choice. You have to buy another XQD. Sorry about that. For right now, because it could change any day. If it was me in your shoes and I was shooting professionally, yeah, look, I might roll the dice and see what happens over the next few months. Look, it's hard to say. If you're not shooting professionally and you're doing it for fun, well, I would roll the dice and just shoot with one card if all you've got left is your SD slot. Difficult to do, but there is no question CFexpress is the future. And really what we're seeing here is just the first version. This thing's got a long way to go. It has not reached its glass ceiling yet. This is just the start of speed and size. Theoretically, it can go beyond what we're seeing here in this car. I mean, this is only a 128 gigabyte because they're reasonably expensive. Right now, they go up to 1 terabyte or even 2 terabytes, which is insane. That's more than computers have in them, and in this tiny little form factor, 1 or 2 terabytes. It's the future. Of course, I'd love to hear what you think about CFexpress. Is this a format that you are excited about and that you will use? Let me know. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. It's been lovely to see you. Please let me know what you think of CFexpress. Do you want to stick with SD? Good old SD. It's been with us a long time. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's cheap. Easier to break. Let me know what you think. As always, if you like what you see and this is your first time here, please subscribe, please share, it makes us all smarter. Please like, would love that. And if you'd like to see over 150 videos right now, just click on the Irwin photography just down here at the bottom of your screen, and I'll see you real soon. And enjoy here another image from my exhibition that's going to be virtual on this channel sometime soon using the Insta360.